Alrighty, and welcome back to Season 2, Episode 2 of NCTV's Beyond the Whistle. Chase Harden alongside me, Rob Frangione, Johnny Konidaris, and Gray Tamasco. And this time, we're talking about the Super Bowl, whereas last week we honed in on the NFL postseason and Super Bowl predictions. Now, like I just said, we're honing in on the 38-35 Chiefs win against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Gray, take her away.
Right. Special welcome to first-time guest Johnny Konidaris alongside myself.
Thank you.
Today, replacing our last time's guest, Will Langford. So starting off, who was correct with their Super Bowl predictions? The only one who was correct was me with the Chiefs. And then Johnny, obviously, he had the Chiefs, but he was not in the podcast last time.
Doesn't count.
Oh, be quiet. You 24-10 was his score prediction. 24-10 was his score prediction. That cancels it out.
I know.
Rob, take it away.
I would like to apologize on behalf of all of us, including Will Langford. We talked way too much smack for how the game turned out. And yeah, with that, I say we get into the game.
Well, hold on. The smack talk was justified. This guy chose 24-10. But anyway, move on. So first, let's start with the overview of the game. First quarter through fourth quarter. Rob, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, so first quarter, man, that was entertaining. What did we have, 14-14? Was that the score at the end of the first?
Was it 7-7?
It was 7-7.
Yeah. Oh, my bad. Okay. Yeah. So it was a great first quarter. I believe you had the Miles Sanders 1-yard run for the touchdown after Kenneth Gainwell got stopped just short. Then the Chiefs came back within 4 minutes with a corner route to Travis Kelce to put the game at a tie score. So we're going into the second quarter. Very entertaining so far.
And then that was when the Eagles took over. They won that quarter 17-7. And they really took over again, 10 points. And I mean, at that point in the game, going into half, everybody's like, the Eagles are just dominating. And everybody's like, what are the Chiefs going to do? What are the Chiefs going to do? And that was the quarter that Mahomes sort of re-injured himself. And everybody's like, oh, the Eagles are going to, win this by a landslide. And then coming right out of the, halftime into the third quarter, they won that quarter 17-8. They won that quarter 7-3, and then the fourth quarter 17-8. But if any of you want to touch on the third quarter, what happened? Some big plays happened, but when we touch on the fourth layer, that's when the real stuff happened.
Yeah, was that scoop and score in the third quarter from the Chiefs?
Well, you had, I believe, one that might have been the second quarter, but then the other one that got called back.
Yeah, that second quarter scoop and score was a big deal that kind of is getting overlooked right now. The Eagles were ready to run away with that. If they score right there, they're outscoring them by 17 going into the half.
100%.
That's almost out of reach even for Superman Mahomes, but I don't know if he can come back from that.
I mean, listen, Patrick Mahomes can come back from anything. I think he has that clutch factor in him, and obviously the injury aspect too. He came through and pulled through that. But one of the most excited players of that game and energetic guys, Travis Kelce. We have some audio from his Super Bowl celebration right in before we get into the fourth quarter. We'll play that for you.
This was actually from the AFC Championship when he was hyped. Right. But he also said the same thing after the Super Bowl, and this just shows how hyped up he was going into the Super Bowl.
Wise words for that Cincinnati mayor. Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni. You gotta fight for your right to party.
And that just shows Travis Kelce's passion for the game. That's cool though. The brothers, Travis versus Jason. Obviously, the mom was a big part of the press during that part. Now let's move on to the fourth quarter. 17-8, the Chiefs won that. And like Gray said, you can never count out the Chiefs. That's the only thing that was holding me back with him when I predicted the Eagles. But the Chiefs dominated that quarter, and then with 2 minutes to go, they were set to kick the field goal, and then we get that holding call.
Oh, boy. Here we go. This is going to be an exciting topic of conversation.
Right, and right before we get there, let's just finally just get it out there. Final score, obviously, Chiefs won by 3, 38-35. But that holding call, man, it sparked a lot of controversy. Obviously, it's known by now that was a call that could be made. The argument is now rather, is it the right time to make that call? And, we have some audio here from Bradbury himself admitting to the call and just kind of saying, listen, I know it happened. I wish it wasn't called, but that's the way the game went. Yeah.
I mean, I pulled the jersey, they called holding. I was hoping they would let it rock, but it wasn't holding. I was hoping he would let it go, but of course, he's a ref. This is a big game, and it was a hold, so they called it.
Man, I mean, That's great to see from Bradbury. Obviously, a class act. Instead of complaining about it, he's taking responsibility. Sounds like a great teammate to have around. But now let's talk about our opinions. I'll start. You guys might not agree with me, but it's the Super Bowl. You've got 2 minutes left. I say let him play. That tug, yeah, sure, he was grabbing his jersey just a teeny bit. I mean, you've barely got a hand on there. I don't think it's the right time to call that play. I mean, in the end, it's an overthrow. You know, that ball landed almost out of bounds in the left side of the end zone. I don't see how you throw that flag in such a crucial time span there.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but Pat Mahomes is thrown to a spot there. I mean, he goes through his first read, it's not there. He's thrown to a spot, and what's stopping him from getting there is that hold. And I appreciate Bradbury saying that, but I think we all know it's a hold, and it's easy to sit on our couch and say, man, you gotta hold on to that flag. You can't let that decide the Super Bowl. It's a disappointing ending to a phenomenal Super Bowl. Exactly. I mean, one for the ages, but the call's the call. That's the game. And you have to respect that, and you have to let him play like that. So I'm with Bradbury. I understand the call.
Listen, I think, personally, my opinion is if it's a call that can be made and the call was made, then there's nothing wrong with it. It obviously wasn't a dumb call. You can argue the timing was wrong, but the ref and the call itself specifically states in the rule book, and it's defined as a hold. And people will say it's a hold. And I think if a penalty is called, it could have not been called. It could have been missed. But at the same time, then you're missing a penalty. So you can think about it from the Eagles' standpoint of it hurt the Eagles. But at the same time, you have, two-time MVP quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who's also can get that call. So you got to think about it from the Chiefs fans' perspective too.
Yeah, but in that stage of the game, it's like, by rule, whatever it is. But with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of a tie game, essentially,
the Super Bowl,
that's much different than a regular season game and pulling it right out of the rule book. Just because it's in the rule book doesn't mean you're calling it.
Thank you.
And whether you officiate or not, just because it's in the rule book, like Gray, we know lacrosse, like a slash in the rule book, we'd get calls every time.
Yeah.
But because the officials let the guys play, with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, officiating's a extremely tough job, and it's easy to sit on your couch and eat potato chips and say, hey, these guys don't know what they're doing when they have one of the hardest jobs and some of the most pressure on them in the NFL. But I just think that's a tough call to make. But I'm not going to sit here and whine about it because, one, I know how tough of a job that is. But two, I just think that's a tough call to make with that little time to go. You're essentially handing the Chiefs a game. And if it was, there was a little tug, but I don't know.
I wouldn't have called it. I wouldn't have called it.
But can you make the ref's job even harder by making them say, okay, you're under 2 minutes, not just let them play? I mean, in the NBA, we've seen them go under fire for doing that a couple of times.
I mean, I gotta say. Sorry.
It's all you.
I got to say, man, the most disappointing part of that call was that it ended up being the difference in that we didn't get to see Jalen Hurts or the entire Eagles offense try to prove himself by going down, tying up the game, or possibly winning the game, after that. Because, you've got, 2 minutes left. I believe it was second and long then? Is that right? And so at that point,
when the call was made?
When the call
was made, it was third down.
No, it was third down.
That's right, yeah. So you get, one more chance to the end zone before they kick the field goal?
No, it was third down.
It was third down.
Okay. It was about to be fourth down,
okay.
So they would have been forced to kick the field goal.
Exactly.
And then they threw the flag. And oh, by the way, the officials have the best angle out of anybody in that scenario. But I just think, again, I'm not going to sit here and argue it. I'm just saying it's a tough call to make under 2 minutes. But by no means are we NFL officials. I think finish your last point.
Right, I'll let Johnny touch on this real quick.
Yeah, I want to quickly mention. I think it was Jerick McKinnon going down at the 1 to seal the game. Can you imagine it being your dream to get a touchdown in the Super Bowl? You see it right in front of you, and going down on the 1 for your team. That should. I saw this. That should be the picture on in every high school gym. That's sportsmanship, right?
That's not necessarily sportsmanship.
That's team. That's
selflessness. Because
being a good team.
Essentially, if he goes smart football. If he goes in the end zone there, he's giving the Eagles a chance. But because he sacrificed himself for his team, meaning a touchdown and his stats for his team, he's winning them the game there. Because guess what? If he goes in, it's a slim chance the Eagles score, but there's still that chance.
Jalen
but
Hurts
because
he
stopped, he fell down, it was basically a 99% chance they win the game unless Butker somehow shanked the kick, but that's a chipped shot for even like a 10-year-old. I mean, that was like a 20-yard kick. So
right. I mean, nerves always get you, but we'll move on from that call now, and let's give a quick shout out, and maybe we'll all touch on some points here too. Hometown hero Lucas Niang, a tackle for the Chiefs, offensive lineman, played here at New Canaan High School. It's really amazing and inspiring to see guys that were once in the same shoes that we were, playing at an incredible stage and just having that incredible spotlight on them. He was also the first player to, I think, represent France in a Super Bowl. And, just a bunch of these accolades and winning a Super Bowl and bringing it home to this town. It really touches the community because now everyone's not rooting. You might not be a Chiefs fan, but you're a Lucas Niang fan.
And it's pretty cool, the fact that he grew up in New Canaan, played youth football for New Canaan his entire life, played for Lou Marinelli, then got recruited to go play at TCU, who played the national championship this year. They weren't that caliber when he played there, but he was actually projected to get drafted pretty high, and then he suffered a hip injury. But either way, and then he goes on to the Super Bowl champions back in when they beat the Niners. I think he was on the team. Or excuse me, was it the Bucks?
They didn't beat the Bucks, but with the 49ers.
No, but they didn't beat the Bucks. But
he was out. He was out.
His rookie year, he opted out because of COVID.
And now he's a Super Bowl champion. Yeah. So that's, I mean, we just want to touch on that because that's pretty cool that we have a guy that was a Super Bowl champion that went to our town. And stay tuned. We might be able to get him on the podcast, and we might be able to fire some questions at him.
Yeah, huge congrats to him. Is it true that he flew Marinelli out to the AFC Championship game? I heard that, which is pretty cool.
I believe Miska went to that.
Was it Miska?
I'm not sure, but
I'm not sure. That's still awesome. Awesome. Congratulations to him.
So I'd like to move on to our next point, and that is that both of the Eagles coordinators, the offensive and defensive coordinators, have left the organization to become the head coaches of new teams. You've got Stan Steichen. He was the offensive coordinator. He's now with the Colts. And Jonathan Gannon, he's with the Cardinals. He was the defensive coordinator. So I'm wondering, how do you think this is going to affect them next season?
And I mean, you talk about Nick Sirianni. He showed that he's a phenomenal coach. But when you have OCs and DCs like that, for example, the DC for the Niners, their defense was phenomenal. When he leaves, it's a whole new system. For example, all of us play sports. If you have a coach that you've built a relationship with and he leaves and some new guy comes in and acts like he's the guy, I mean, technically he is the guy, but you got to build a whole new relationship with him that you don't have because your old OC or old DC's gone. So they need to build that relationship. And this guy, who knows, maybe he's not good at calling plays. I don't know. So it might look different next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles are the same old Eagles, how they played this year. So.
Yeah, we've seen stuff like this happen before. I don't think it's going to have a massive impact on them. I think they'll still be very good next year. I'm just wondering how much of an impact it's going to have.
My controversial take here is that I think that a lot of these coaches were along for the ride. I wasn't a big Sirianni guy. I mean, props to him for making it that far. I mean, first year, that's impressive. Yeah. But that's a team full of vets, and they're except for their quarterback, really. Besides that, they were all pretty established. That line was already set up. That defense is full of all pros and veterans. And I think just grooming Jalen Hurts the right way, they were in a position to succeed, and I think they still will be next year, and nothing's going to change.
And to a certain extent, I agree with you because everybody credits the coaches for stuff like this, but you also got to credit the players, right? When guys build into a system, that helps everything. When you have guys like Jalen Hurts, you have the best offensive line in the league. You have good receivers in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You have a good defense. You have a good D-line, right? I mean, you're telling me you're not going to be a good team? That's absurd, right? So coaching does have a part in it, but I sort of agree with you, Johnny. You got to also credit the players in that circumstance. And sometimes it's the other way around. Like guys shame coaches, and they're like, they didn't get the job done, and then they have guys that aren't getting the job done. Obviously, they're in the NFL, so they're, much better than, they're pretty darn legit, but they're not of that caliber in the NFL. And then these guys blame the coaches. So,
right. I mean, you guys touch on that coaching and that aspect of building up the team. And if you look, there's this one graphic, you scroll through on Instagram, and the only player was Brown on the Eagles who wasn't drafted to the team. And I believe he came from the Titans. But one player out of an entire, group of key players.
Shows their chemistry.
That came from the team. It shows the team chemistry. It shows you built your team from the ground up, as opposed to, the Chiefs, half their guys came from different places, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's different teams build themselves in different ways, and this was the Eagles' year. The Chiefs have been dominant for the last few years, and the Eagles had their Super Bowl run against the Patriots a few years back, but at the same time the Chiefs have kept up this dominance. And honestly, I gave my prediction of the Chiefs, but I was kind of anticipating the Eagles to win. I had a few points during that game and really anticipated that happening and, that overtaking. I got nervous a few times, even though I was pretty confident sitting there in my Alex Smith jersey from 2015 or whatever that might have been.
I don't want to get a little too off track here, and I know we're going to talk about NFL awards a little bit later. But I mean, AJ Brown, you said that entire team is the same team as last year.
Right.
I mean, from top to bottom, it's the same team. The only difference is AJ Brown. And when we talk about MVP, most valuable player, if a player is able to take your team to the Super Bowl from not even winning your division, that seems like a very important player to me, or very valuable player. But I know we'll get into that a little bit later.
All right, and welcome back to Season 2, Episode 2, Segment 2. Chase Harden, Rob Frangione, Johnny Konidaris, Gray Tamasco had to dip for Segment 2. We finished Segment 1 with him. Now we're honing in on early Super Bowl predictions for Segment 2. Let's go. And guys, I'm taking the Detroit Lions.
You are out of your mind.
I love it. I love it. I love that
You
pick.
are out of your mind.
I'm so on board with that, Johnny. Why is that a bad pick?
For them to get to the Super Bowl, you think Jared Goff.
He's taking the Rams to the Super Bowl. He took them to the Super Bowl.
Jared Goff is getting through the Eagles. Jared Goff is going to be Jalen Hurts when it matters most in the NFC Championship. Jared Goff is gonna retire with a Super Bowl MVP.
They got that dog. No. They got that dog in there.
They're not
Dan Campbell's a dog.
They're not beating the Chiefs. They're not beating anybody from the AFC by biting their kneecaps. Okay, that is not going to happen.
That's the only way to take out the Chiefs, man.
I love Williams. That running back, dog, absolute dog. He is not good enough to carry that bummy quarterback all the way to the Super Bowl.
I'm telling you,
disrespect it.
there's a couple of
quarterback.
coaches in the league.
Dan Campbell's not one of them.
Dog
And Dan Campbell is not that dude.
He's one of them, and you know
is.
it.
He's not that dude.
Listen to him.
What other predictions you got?
I got two big predictions here.
Oh, boy.
One of them's not as big. Okay, my first take. I think Joe Burrow gets it done. All right,
I like that.
The stars are gonna
I
align.
like that, yeah.
It's gonna work out for him.
like
But
that.
here's my spicy take of the day.
Johnny's spicy takes are a
The
little too
Bills
spicy.
will not make the playoffs next year.
That is outrageous. No.
I think you had a little too much water
And
to drink.
Let me justify here, okay? I'll give you my thought. The Bills will not make the playoffs because Josh Allen has got way too many turnover issues, and the Jets,
season.
The Jets, if they get either Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson, are legit. They're a young team who's got something to fight for, and I believe in them, man. And I think Salah's got it going on, and their only problem is Zach Wilson, and he might be out of there.
I'm sorry. If you think that the rotting corpse of Aaron Rodgers is going to carry the Jets to the playoffs,
The two-time MVP?
over the Buffalo
Back-to-back
Bills,
MVP.
No. He's what, 40 years old now?
1 year reserve.
He's not taking them to the playoffs. You are out of your mind.
Johnny,
1 year reserve.
I think you had a little too much water to drink for lunch, so we're going to move on to that. To player awards, we're going to start with the MVP. I think that was pretty obvious. Patrick Mahomes, he
Jalen
led
Hurts
the
doesn't
league
get
in
hurt, he
passing yards. Here's a cool stat. He's the first ever quarterback to win a Super Bowl leading the season in passing yards. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. I think that was pretty obvious. I don't think there's any arguments about that one.
Because Tom Brady's a bum. He never led the league in anything. He just won Super Bowls.
If Jalen Hurts never gets hurt, or, doesn't get hurt this season, he wins the MVP right
Sure,
now. I mean, he was such a great two-way player.
But
obviously, you could see that in the Super Bowl. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes deserved that.
But something about Mahomes. I mean, I know it's in the playoffs where he got hurt and he had to show that grit. But man, like to come back and play with that injury. And I know it's a regular season award, but it's not. I mean, everyone has recency bias, and seeing Mahomes go out there, be Superman. in the divisional round and go out and play on a high ankle sprain, and then in the Super Bowl he went on to win it, but that was after the awards. He deserved it. Shout out to him. Congrats, Mahomes. But
and then we'll go to Coach of the Year, Brian Dable. He's another
Extremely
one,
warranted,
the
yeah.
first ever coach that went 9-7 to win Coach of the Year. Usually it's like a coach with 12 or 13 wins. He was the first ever coach to do that. Brian Dable comes into a Giants program that hasn't done well in the past years. Joe Judge was obviously the previous coach, and I think that was very well warranted. And I have no arguments as to why Brian Dable was Coach of the Year.
I mean, I think the only other realistic option was either Doug Peterson or Nick Sirianni. I don't see how you can give it to anyone but Dable, though.
Kyle Shanahan was in that talk. I didn't really like that, though. Kyle Shanahan did a lot this year, but I still thought the fact that Brian Dable totally transformed that organization, I like that pick.
Brian Dable was able to scheme together an offense with Walmart employees at receiver, and he got him far, and congrats to him, because that was a horrible squad, and I'm a big Giants fan. That was a horrible squad that he really turned around, and I'm excited for their future. I'm finally excited to watch Giants games.
You go from running a QB sneak from your own 4-yard line on 3rd and 9 in week 17, I believe, against the commander or the football team, to winning a playoff game for the first time since 2011. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me.
And, I don't think anybody has arguments about Brian Dable. He showed up on the first day in a suit and tie, coming out of his jacked up truck. So everybody was like, this guy's got his dog in him. Doug Peterson as well. That's why, or not Doug Peterson. I like Doug Peterson as a coach. He's got that dog in him too, but Dan Campbell's got a lot of it, and that's why they're winning the Super Bowl. Anyway,
most dog in him.
Comeback player of the year. Let's talk about this.
Man, that was a snub.
Geno Smith. I like that pick a lot. Geno Smith came. He did a lot for the Seahawks this year. Everybody thought Russell Wilson leaves. The Chiefs are doomed. The Seahawks are doomed. They did pretty well this year. Made it to the wild card and then lost to the Niners.
Rob, all you, Rob.
Yeah, I mean,
agree.
I got to say, Geno Smith was a great player this year. However, he goes 10 years or so being awful. Just
awful.
Terrible.
Career backup.
Exactly. And he wins the starting position in Seattle because who else you got? Drew Lock. He's even worse.
And so,
you win comeback player of the year after doing nothing for your entire career. I don't see how it's possible. I've been a huge Saquon Barkley fan ever since he was at Penn State, and I'm a Michigan fan. That's saying a lot. Saquon Barkley got robbed. I mean, he has a torn ACL 1 year, high ankle sprain another year. There's no reason that Saquon Barkley shouldn't have won that award with the season that he had and how he's been doing the past couple of years.
Yeah, congratulations, Geno Smith, on 10 years of mediocrity and one slightly better year where you took a team to the divisional round and promptly lost.
Wild card round,
sorry.
In embarrassing fashion.
And promptly lost in embarrassing fashion, right. He got exposed. I think he had a really cupcake schedule. And I mean, he was able to do a lot with a little, but man, I think Saquon Barkley was more deserving than anyone else for that.
And then here we go with Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Both Jets. Can you question who's the problem for the Jets, whether it's Wilson, coaching, whoever it is? So anyway, Garrett Wilson, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Sauce Gardner, Defensive Rookie of the Year. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
He wasn't even the best rookie on that. Garrett Wilson wasn't even the best offensive rookie on that squad at the beginning of the year. I think Breece Hall runs away with that award if it wasn't for that unfortunate injury, and I think he'll be back and could be our comeback player of the year next year. But man, this Jets squad's looking dangerous. I think they're going to be really good next year if they can sort out that quarterback position.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't think that Garrett Wilson should have won that. I mean, Olave, I think he was the better receiver. You could argue that, Garrett Wilson didn't really have a very good quarterback situation. But then again, neither did Olave. I mean, you have Andy Dalton throwing to you.
The red rifle.
Exactly. I mean, and then he wasn't even nominated for one thing. That was just bogus. Then you've got, I think, Kenneth Walker, who I was not a fan of in college after he beat my Michigan Wolverines with 5 touchdowns. But I think he was more deserving. Only problem was he didn't start until week 6, I believe. And that's what eventually, held him back from winning that award. And then, Brock Purdy, in no world should he been nominated for that award over Chris Olave. Yeah, he does good with, the best team in the league, if you ask me.
Recency bias. You can
Well, I
argue
mean,
system quarterback.
I think the only reason he wouldn't have been picked if they were debating whether he was picked was because he was a third string in the beginning of the year and then didn't play till week 6, week 7 or whatever. It might have been later. But anyway, let's get to offensive player and defensive player of the year. Justin Jefferson, your offensive player of the year.
Fantasy MVP.
And I like that pick. I think Justin Jefferson, I think he had probably the best catch of the year. Not probably.
I agree.
I've got
The
Pickens.
best
I've got
catch of the
no
year
Pickens as
against
the
the
best catch.
Bills on 4th down. That was a crazy game. Justin Jefferson, I love him as the offensive player of the year. Nick Bosa, I like as well as defensive player of the year. He was legit. He's, one of those guys, one of the souls to that 49ers defense, and that's why they were the best defense in the league. He was one of the reasons.
Yeah, Jefferson, no questions there. I would have liked to see Micah Parsons come home with Defensive Player of the Year, but Bosa deserved it. I'm okay with that, and I think Parsons will get his chance. So
I know that you're a huge Giants fan. I'm shocked to hear you say that. Rooting for your division rival, one of the most hated men in New York. I'm shocked.
Watching Micah Parsons wreak havoc on Daniel Jones for 2 games, you got to appreciate the greatness. He is an absolute freak. So he'll definitely get his chance, and there's no doubt in my mind that he'll have a Defensive Player of the Year by the time he hangs up the cleats.
And when people underestimate the fact that when you are able to get pressure on a quarterback, it disrupts everything. When you can get pressure on a guy like Patrick Mahomes, it limits his play. And when you have guys like Nick Bosa or Aaron Donald last year or, whoever, Chris Jones, like Frank Clark, these guys that can just disrupt plays, it's so valuable to your defense.
That front 7 on the Bucs, to your point with Mahomes, that's how they beat Mahomes. That's how the Giants beat Brady in that second Super Bowl. So, pressure is so important. So these pass rushers are completely deserving.
All right, that should just about do it from Season 2, Episode 2. This is our second segment. We did our first segment, and that's also going to be in this podcast. Chase Harden, Rob Frangione, Johnny Konidaris, and an invisible Gray Tamasco who had to leave. We say so long from Beyond the Whistle, NCTV's podcast.